Ever take a minute to think about everything that goes into getting food from the farm to your plate?
It's a long journey for sure.
Today we're talking about a surprisingly big player in that journey: plastic. We're diving into the world of plasticulture.
Plasticulture, yeah, it's not some sci-fi thing. It's about how much plastic is intertwined with our food.
We'll explore how plastic became so crucial to our food system and what that really means, good and bad.
It's fascinating, really. Plasticulture is right at the intersection of a bunch of huge global challenges.
Like what?
Well, you've got the world population on track to hit 10 billion by 2050, and we need to figure out how to feed everyone in a sustainable way.
Right. Got to feed everyone, but sustainably.
Exactly. And at the same time, we're dealing with the consequences of all this plastic pollution.
So it's like we're trying to solve one huge problem and might be creating another one at the same time.
Kind of, yeah. The numbers show we'll likely need to produce 50% more food in 2050 than we did just a few years ago, back in 2010.
Wow, 50% more. That's a ton.
It is. And on top of that, climate change is already making everything more difficult.
Oh, yeah. I can see how that would make things tougher on farmers.
We're seeing more droughts, weather patterns are unpredictable, all of that makes it even harder for farmers to grow what we need.
It's like this perfect storm, more people to feed, a changing climate, and only so much land and resources.
Exactly.
So I get why plasticulture seems like a good solution at first, even if it seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's all about trade-offs, right?
Right.
At first, plastic seemed like the perfect material for agriculture. Affordable, lightweight, incredibly durable.
And those things are important in agriculture.
Oh, yeah. These qualities meant that plastic could really boost how much food we could grow and help save resources.
At least that's how it seemed at first.
Yeah.
Our research highlighted plastic's role in irrigation as a prime example. That's a big one in modern farming, isn't it?
Huge, yeah. Imagine those irrigation systems as the veins and arteries of a modern farm. They're a lot more efficient than older ways of doing things.
So less water is lost.
Exactly. Way less water loss through leaks and evaporation, which is incredibly important in dry places where every drop counts.
Makes sense. So plastic is helping us grow more food with less water. That sounds like a good thing. But then there's plastic mulch. The idea of covering farmland with sheets of plastic just seems strange at first, I have to admit it.
It is one of those things that seems strange until you get the science behind it.
Okay, so explain it to me.
Think of plastic mulch, like giving each plant its own little climate-controlled environment.
It's like a tiny greenhouse for each plant.
Yeah, kind of. It keeps moisture in, prevents big temperature swings, and even acts as a barrier, keeping out weeds that would compete with crops.
Interesting, that makes a lot more sense. And this goes beyond just fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all see plastic in how our food is packaged, but it's even more widespread in our food system than that.
You're absolutely right. Plastic is everywhere in agriculture when you really start to notice it.
I imagine once you start to see it, you see it everywhere.
Yeah. Livestock farming, aquaculture, you name it. From huge fish farms to those containers keeping produce fresh at the grocery store, plastic's there. But this is where that durability and low cost start to show a downside.
Sounds like a classic case of every rose has its thorn, doesn't it?
Exactly. That long lifespan, the thing that makes plastic so useful is also its weakness. It doesn't just break down. Instead, it breaks into smaller and smaller pieces, so small you can't even see them. Microplastics and even tinier nanoplastics.
And those tiny pieces don't just look bad in the environment, right?
Yeah.
This is about stuff we can't even see that could end up in our food, and that's a little worrying.
Yeah, it's more than just an eyesore. Microplastics have turned up pretty much everywhere scientists have looked for them.
Everywhere.
Soil, water, the air, even the food chain. Yeah.
So it's not just that it looks bad. This could be a health problem.
Right. We're still figuring out the long-term effects of this, but there's more and more evidence that it's something we need to deal with.
Our sources really go into some specific ways plastic might be harming the entire food system. There was a lot about something called phosphorus.
Oh, phosphorus. That's kind of the unsung hero for plants. It's a nutrient they need to grow, kind of like a building block for healthy plants.
Like the foundation they needed to grow.
Exactly. And research suggests that plastic pollution might be messing with how well the soil can hold on to this nutrient.
So less phosphorus means struggling crops, which could lead to food shortages down the line.
That's the concern. Yeah.
And if I'm getting this right, it's not just the indirect effect on nutrients. The plastic itself might be bad for the plants.
You got it. Studies show plastic can directly mess with a plant's ability to thrive.
Really? Like how?
We're talking about problems with photosynthesis, how plants use sunlight for energy, and even how well they can handle stress from things like, drought or pests.
So it's like being constantly exposed to something toxic.
Basically, yeah. That's what these plants are dealing with in soil contaminated with plastic.
Man, that's pretty intense. And we talked earlier about plastic being used with livestock and aquaculture. So is there a chance of microplastic contamination in meat, dairy, seafood?
It's definitely something to think about. Because plastic is so embedded in the whole agricultural system, the potential for contamination goes right through the food chain.
This really shows how big of a problem this is. It can feel kind of overwhelming to think about all the ways plastic is a part of our food system, in good ways and bad. But we can't just end on a downer, right? There have to be ways to deal with this.
For sure. It's a big challenge, but more and more people are paying attention, and there's a real push to find solutions. We can do things to reduce plastic pollution in agriculture. It's not hopeless at all.
Okay, so what can we do? Give me some hope here.
Well, there's a helpful framework to start with the R strategies. Refuse, reduce, reassign, reuse, recycle, recover.
Okay, so 6 R's.
Yeah.
And that gives us a way to tackle the problem from all sides. All right, let's break down these R's. Refuse sounds like it's about saying no to plastic we don't really need in the first place.
You got it.
So consumers have power here.
Absolutely. Imagine if everyone started choosing products with less plastic packaging.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And for farmers, they can check out alternatives to the usual plastic mulch. Things like biodegradable mulches made from natural fibers like jute or coconut coir.
So we're talking about using what nature already provides instead of relying on fossil fuels.
Right.
It's shifting away from that throwaway culture to a more circular economy. Use it, and it goes back into the system by decomposing or being reused.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. What about reduce?
Yeah.
That seems pretty self-explanatory.
It is. It's about using less plastic wherever we can.
Like with packaging.
Yeah, making sure we're using as little as possible for packaging, finding ways to use plastic products longer, and even just being aware of how much plastic we use in our daily lives. Little things can make a difference.
And redesign makes me think about coming up with new ways to approach these challenges. Are there any good alternatives to conventional plastics being developed?
We're not at the point of having bioplastics that just disappear on their own, but there's some interesting research going on.
Oh. Tell me more about that.
Scientists are looking into bioplastics made from renewable resources like corn or sugarcane. And the cool thing about them is they can decompose or biodegrade.
So instead of lasting forever in the environment, they break down naturally.
That's the idea.
That sounds like a game changer. What about those last 3 R's? Reuse, recycle, recover.
Those are all about making a closed loop for how we use plastic. Think of reuse as finding ways to give plastic products a second life. Like, some farmers are already doing this. They're collecting and washing plastic mulch so they can use it again for multiple seasons.
Yeah.
Recycle is about turning plastic waste into new stuff. And recover is about catching and reusing plastic before it can get to a landfill or pollute the environment.
So it's all these different approaches, all working together. Reducing how much plastic we need, finding new options, and being smarter about how we manage the plastic we do use. That sounds like a huge task.
It is, but it's not impossible.
Where do we even begin with something this big?
It starts with knowing about the issue and everyone committing to making a change. Regular people, industries, governments, policymakers, everyone. And there are specific things we can do that can really help. One important step is treating wastewater before using it for irrigation.
To get the plastic out.
Yeah, exactly. That helps keep plastic particles and other contaminants out of the food chain right from the start.
Because we don't want to solve one problem, like not having enough water, and accidentally create another problem at the same time.
Exactly. It's about looking at the bigger picture, thinking about the long-term consequences of what we do.
Makes sense.
And speaking of long-term solutions, there's some pretty amazing research being done right now with microbes.
Oh yeah, tell me about that. That's the research with the tiny organisms, right?
Yeah, microbes.
It almost sounds like science fiction. Using these tiny things we can barely even imagine as a way to deal with plastic waste.
It kind of is. But the really cool thing is that lots of types of microbes can already break down certain plastics.
So they can eat plastic.
You could say that. The challenge is finding the ones that are best at it and figuring out how to make them work on a large scale.
So we're talking about using nature to clean up our mess. That's a pretty powerful idea.
It is. It reminds us that solutions can come from all sorts of places. Plasticulture comes with big challenges, but it's definitely not a hopeless situation. We have the knowledge, the technology, and more, we have the will to find solutions. It's about making sustainability a priority, making smart choices, and working together to create a healthier, stronger food system that works for everyone.
That's a great point. It reminds me that even something as simple as sitting down to eat connects us to these huge environmental and social issues.
It does.
And we all have a part to play in making things more sustainable.
I agree. Whether it's choosing products with less plastic packaging or buying from companies that care about the environment or even just thinking about how much plastic we use ourselves, every little thing adds up.
It really makes you think twice about what's on your plate, doesn't it?
It really does. Food touches everything.
We started this deep dive asking about plastic in agriculture.
Seems simple enough.
Right. But the more we looked, the more complex it all became. So many challenges, but some really interesting opportunities too.
It really shows that there's always more to the story.
Exactly. It makes you want to dig deeper to understand how things really work. So as we wrap up our look at plasticulture, any final thoughts for our listeners? What should we be thinking about after we leave the table?
Next time you're at the grocery store, take a minute. Just look around and notice how much plastic there is. How much that started on a farm somewhere. It's a lot to think about, but it might just make you want to learn more about where your food comes from and how it gets to you.
Food for thought, literally. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of plasticulture. It's a complex issue, but understanding it is the first step towards a more sustainable future.